This episode of Creep Street Podcast is brought to you by Martini Coffee Roasters. Martini Coffee Roasters is not a martini-flavored coffee. In fact, it is a family-owned and operated company run by the Martini family. And while I'm sure they enjoy a good cocktail, they are all about that high-quality, smooth, flavorful coffee. Unlike many other roasters, Martini Coffee Roasters roast manually using a traditional method of roasting, most relying on sight and sound to ensure the best results, okay? This is quality, people. This is artisanal. This is handmade. This is what you're wanting. And not only that, but they also sell green coffee beans for those home roasters out there. So please support small businesses and check out Martini Coffee Roasters at martinicoffee.com. Once again, check out Martini Coffee Roasters at martinicoffee.com.
You've taken a wrong turn down Creep Street.
Citizens of the Milky Way, this is Maureen Bogey.
And this is Dylan Hackworth.
And you are listening to that Creep Street Podcast.
Oh, yeah.
Here we are, baby. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to have a great episode today. If you'd like to support the podcast, please follow us on Instagram at Creep Street Podcast, Twitter, Creep Street Pod. We're also on Facebook. And if you enjoy this podcast, please give us a like, a follow, a review, a thumbs up, whatever applies to you.
Absolutely.
And we also have a lovely Patreon where there we have some great bonus content that you can get if you just need more. If you need more of that Creep Street love,
Who doesn't need more, baby?
That's right. So, but speaking of Patreon, Dylan, will you please read off our top tier Patreon donors?
Okay, here we go. Of course, the Dream, James Watkins. The Finnish Face via Lungfist. The Madman, Marcus Hall. The Vivacious, Vicky McHugh. The Tenacious, Teresa Hackworth. The Heartbreak Kid, Chris Hackworth. The Oh-So-Suave, Sean Richardson. The British Bone Breaker, Bex Martin. The Notorious, Nicholas Barker. The Terrifying Taylor Lashmet. The Count of Cool, Cameron Corliss. And the Archduke of Attitude, Adam Archer. Yes. If you want to get bonus goodies every month, just like those people we have just listed, go to patreon.com/Creep Street Podcast.
And those were just our top tier donors. You don't have to be a top tier donor to get the bonus content.
Yeah, and you'll still get a shout out, a one-time shout out. Doesn't matter what level you want to
got lots of options.
$2, $5, it's great. And you get something at every level. You get something every month, a bonus audio thing or something.
That's right, baby.
And also, we just got to give a sweet special shout out to one of our Patreon members, Mr. James Watkins. It is his birthday.
Happy birthday, James.
I think this comes out on the 5th. I think his birthday will be the 4th. So this will be, when this comes out, it'll be the day after. But happy birthday, sir. We're so glad to have you as part of Creep Street.
Yes, you are such a strong member of Creep Street. We really so appreciate all of your support. We hope you have the best day. We should have known that you were a fellow Piscean.
That's right.
It makes sense because we're Pisces. Of course you're a Pisces too. We're just emotional little fuckers, aren't we?
Absolutely.
But we're also kind of chill.
Yeah.
And we like naps.
Absolutely. And also, before we get started on today's episode, our 1-year anniversary is this month. It's coming. We launched on March 20th of last year. Mm-hmm. So March 19th, Friday, March 19th will be our 1-year anniversary show. We are returning to our very first subject, Shadow People, with a focus on the Hat Man.
That's right.
Now, we have already gotten some personal stories in, but on this episode for Hat Man, we want to get your personal experiences with the Hat Man or just Shadow People in general.
Please.
So email it to us, DM us. We will include those. All right. Well, you know what? Let's get to it.
Okay, I guess. Fine. Whatever. Weird, but sure.
Today's episode is Encounter at Falcon Lake.
Falcon Lake.
That's right.
That's not just a lake for falcons, even though that would be
No.
cool, scary, but also kind of cute. No, this is a lake it's just the name is Falcon.
Just real quick, my sources. I read the Falcon Lake UFO Encounter by George Dudding. And also, the IronSkeptic.com is where I found an official police report that I will be reading from later.
Official okay, here we go. Very governmental.
Let's get to it. Our story begins on 1967 in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. On this day, Stefan Michalak arose in his home in Winnipeg and got ready for a day of work. Now, a quick backstory on Stefan.
Okay.
He was born August 7th, 1916 in Poland. He actually served in the U.S. Army when they were over there after the end of World War II. I'm not sure exactly what his role was, but he assisted with the U.S. Army there. And also, the source just literally briefly says that he also worked for British intelligence in some capacity.
Oh.
Not sure what that means, but it seems weird to just bring up casually.
That is weird because that could mean so many different things.
In 1946, Stefan got married, and by 1948, he and his wife had a son and daughter. In 1948, he left the service, and at this time, Poland was under Soviet occupation. And so life was not easy, and Stefan knew that if he wanted to be able to give his family some kind of a future, they needed to get out of there.
Right.
So in 1948, Stefan temporarily left his family behind and immigrated to Saskatchewan, Canada, with the goal of saving up enough money to bring his family over. In 1957, after 9 years, Stefan was finally able to bring his family over to Canada.
Oh my God, 9 years, damn.
Yeah, they were so happy, obviously, to be reunited. The very next year, in 1958, they had another son.
Oh, very good.
So they didn't wait long. They got down to it.
Well, they were apart for 9 years, for Christ's sake.
Absolutely. Something unique about Stefan, he had always loved geology. And in the early years, after first arriving in Canada, he attended school and studied geology. He'd picked up the hobby of prospecting for minerals around the area.
Oh, that is cool.
In 1960, he got a job working as an industrial mechanic for the Inland Cement Company. And as time went on, Stefan transferred to another plant in Winnipeg, Manitoba. So that's what brings us to this location.
Okay.
So now, just to get us all caught up, when our story begins, it's Friday, May 19th, 1967. Stefan is 51 years old. His children are Eva, age 20, Mark, age 19, and Stan, age 9. We don't hear much about the kids. It was just a fact they put in the... It's funny, they don't even mention the wife's name. But they, for some reason, know the name and ages of the kids. But just putting it in there since it was there. So just giving you an idea of everything about this family leading up to this.
No, it's good to paint the scene, add a little color, add a little spice.
So Stefan goes to work, and it's a pretty usual day. He has a bit of skip in his step because this weekend was a long weekend.
Oh, pop off, King.
Yes.
Enjoy that.
The following Monday was Victoria Day, so he'd have the day off. It's a national holiday up there, so they would have work off and everything.
That's kind of fun.
He got out of work a little early that day, around 3:30 p.m., and he went home and packed while his wife made him up a lunch. He was going to be out in the woods a lot, so it had to be something that wouldn't spoil,
Right,
so
right.
A lot of like sausage, cheese, fruits, bread, stuff like that.
Just like a Polish man's dream come true, basically.
Oh, yeah. He was only going to be staying one night, so the lunch was for the next day on Saturday. So he packed up all his prospecting tools. He didn't pack any extra clothes, just a light jacket. He didn't want to be weighted because he's going to be on foot out in the woods and stuff. Doesn't want to be weighted down.
You're not out there to impress anyone. Just wear the damn dirty clothes.
He was going to be doing his prospecting on Saturday, so that night he was going to be staying in a hotel there in the area. So Stefan, he didn't want to leave his family without a car, so his son dropped him off at the bus station in town. And the bus departed at 7:15, and about 9:30, Stefan arrived at his destination. So now, a little rundown of the location where this takes place.
Which is cool. We've been doing a little bit of Canada's been coming up kind of
I know.
frequently lately. We just have Canada fever.
Absolutely.
I am obsessed with Canada. If any Canadian listeners up there,
that's right.
We love you.
The 24-karat killer, Cody Grant, is one of them.
Ooh.
So the name of this town, it was a little resort town called Falcon Beach, and just had a few hundred residents. It's located on the western end of Falcon Lake. And this area, it's in Manitoba. It's not far from the Ontario-Manitoba border, just to give you an idea of where it's at. And it's not that far from like the Minnesota border. I think it was only like 48, 50 miles from the Minnesota border. So just kind of give you an idea where this place is at.
And is this where your guy Chris Jericho is from?
Amen. Chris Jericho. That's right.
If you don't know who that is, he's a wrestler, man.
Yeah, that's right. From Winnipeg, baby. So the land in the area was known to be packed full of like minerals and stuff. Everything from gold and silver to quartz and nickel, all that stuff.
Love it.
Now, the impression I get was that Stefan was more just about the fun of it.
Right.
Even though he, certainly would like to strike it rich, it was more, I think he also just enjoyed just the activity of prospecting.
You're kind of hiking, you're outdoors. It's a good hobby, honestly.
Stefan checked into his room at the Falcon Motel. Funny enough, his room was room 13.
Uh-oh.
He had some dinner and went to bed that night around 10:30 p.m. So the next morning, the day of the encounter.
Oh,
It's Saturday, May 20th, 1967. Stefan got up at 5:30 a.m. on the dot, eager to start his day.
damn.
For breakfast, he ate some of the food his wife packed for him, and then he took off. He wasn't planning to stay another night, so as he was leaving, he just left his motel key at the front desk and went on his way. And from there, he traveled west down the Trans-Canadian Highway. And then he headed north a few miles into the woods towards his destination, and along the way, he stopped to check for other mineral deposits and whatnot. So finally, he arrives at the destination that he had planned to go to.
Mm-hmm.
So there was this big quartz vein which ran right next to a stream. And nearby, there was a lot of like swampy areas, stuff like that. And about 200 feet away was a gaggle of geese that were just floating on a nearby body of water. Stefan suspected that the vein of quartz was packed with nickel. So he jotted down some notes, he had a quick lunch and some coffee, and then he got to work, chipping away at the quartz with his tools. He also wore a pair of welding glasses. Obviously, he wore them to protect his eyes, but like if you were welding or working with bright light, you could flip it and then that green lens would come down to sort of protect your eyes. He wasn't using that at the moment. He was just using it to protect his eyes. But he had
that thing, yeah.
Right. And that's when it began.
Oh, my.
It was about 12:15 p.m., and Stefan was bent down on one knee, chipping away at the quartz, and he noticed the geese were squawking. Every now and then, obviously, geese will get spooked and bark around a little bit, but this was something a bit more. Something was like freaking these geese out.
Right, they weren't just out there goosing around. They were goosed.
So it was enough to actually make Stefan turn away from his work and kind of look up in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
That was when he noticed a bright light in the sky moving in his direction. A moment later, another bright light appeared and seemed to be following the first one. They were approaching from the southwest. It immediately became clear to Stefan what these strange lights were. After a moment, Stefan was able to determine that these shining lights were a sort of cigar-shaped objects, each with a sort of hump in the middle. So how many times have we seen that cylindrical-shaped crafts like the Lake Anjakuni, the Tic Tac UFO most recently on the we see this a lot. Oddly enough, the crafts seem to make no noise whatsoever. Another thing that we counter a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And as they got closer, they almost seemed to morph into an oval shape.
Weird.
Stefan stood there in amazement. He also noted that the two objects both appeared to travel at exactly the same speed, keeping the exact same distance between them. Each seemed to be rotating in some way, and they glowed a strange red color. So now the crafts are within 100 feet of Stefan, and he's still in shock. He's sitting on one knee. From this close range, Stefan was actually able to determine that the crafts were sort of disc-like, much like the traditional flying saucer.
Right.
But this morphing thing, remember at Lake Anjakuni, those two people said they saw something that looked like a bullet that morphed into a bullet, and like there's something about these crafts.
Wait, at Lake Anjakuni?
Remember that? There was a part where the Mounties, they were like a family of fur trappers.
Yes.
Yeah, they had said they had seen something weird in the sky.
Wow, yeah, that morphing thing.
Yeah.
That's kind of spooky.
Yeah.
You know, you don't really hear about. That's just so far away from what we understand as like a vehicle or an object. You know, that it's able to morph. That's wild.
It's almost able to morph to what it needs to be in that moment. So one of the craft landed on a rock ledge about 160 feet from where Stefan was, and the other one hovered silently above the ground about 10 or 12 feet in the air. Stefan had no idea if the craft could see him or not. The particular spot where he was kneeling happened to be behind a rock ledge, so he was sort of hidden. Mm-hmm. So he kind of just watched there as the crafts just hovered. They changed colors. They changed from red to gray, then back to red. And Stefan was kicking himself for not bringing a camera, of course, but obviously he wasn't planning on seeing some shit like this.
Right.
And the camera would have just been extra weight to carry around.
Exactly, yeah. Don't beat yourself up, Stefan. It's not your fault.
Stefan also notes that he was very excited and intrigued by what he was seeing, as well as, obviously being scared.
Yeah.
He was alone in the wilderness and a few miles from anywhere else, so if he got hurt, there'd be no one around to help. So,
right.
Then the hovering cloud, the one that hadn't landed, the one that was hovering 10, 12 feet off the ground, began to slowly move back in the direction from which it came, changing colors from red to orange to various shades of green. And then suddenly and silently, in a burst of speed, it rocketed away out of sight.
Wow.
Interesting.
Very weird.
This thing, remember in Rendlesham Forest, this whole thing about no sound? So this is a common thing.
Yes, absolutely. And the changing colors thing is
Also,
odd too, because that's a thing that you hear a lot about colored lights with UFO sightings.
Exactly.
But there's got to be a reason for it, It's like, I'm sure that isn't just, an aesthetic choice.
Exactly.
It's like, I wonder why that is happening. And then also, it's interesting too, because, with our human technology today, we obviously can create lights that are different color.
Right,
but
right.
in terms of just like explosions or power used to propel something like a rocket or a plane or whatever.
Right.
Really the only thought, like the natural light that comes out of it is, red or orange or sometimes blue if, for fire. But these other colors like gray and green, and so it's clearly it's not what we are understanding.
Right.
It's
not
just
lights
mysterious.
from like combustion engines. It's not like fire. This thing isn't just running on gasoline or some shit.
And the colors must have some, importance or reason,
Right.
Very odd.
So the other craft remained perched up on that ledge. Stefan observed it from where he was hiding. Later he would even draw a sketch of what he saw. And he would describe this craft as being about 35 to 40 feet in diameter, meaning from the center of it to the end. So it gives you an idea of how big this thing was. About 11 feet high, with a sort of 3-foot tall dome on top. Now, despite this craft being utterly quiet, for the most part, Stephen did think he could notice a soft whirring sound, almost like an electric motor would make, but very hushed, very quiet.
Right.
And there was almost, he said, it seemed to be like a suction in the air. I don't know. It doesn't say this in the source. I'm almost guessing, like maybe it was like a way of cooling off its engine. It's like breathing in air around just to cool it off, maybe.
Another thing, too, with UFOs, that theory or thought, at least, about how these things maybe work and how they're able to change direction so quickly is, instead of the way that human beings are creating ships and rockets and things like that now, where it's pushing the craft through the atmosphere or through the environment, whereas thought is with these UFOs is instead of pushing through, it's kind of pulling through.
Right.
So it's like, and this is why it's hard to kind of wrap your head around, is because there's no human technology that we at least know of.
Now, Stefan could hear what sounded like the hiss of hot metal cooling. And as he watched, the craft was kind of like glowing red like hot metal, and as the longer he watched, it sort of turned to a grayish yellow brass color, almost like it was metal cooling off. Stefan stayed hidden, and he continued sketching and taking notes of what the hell it was he was seeing. But after about 10 minutes, there was some motion. A sort of hatch on the side of the craft opened up about 2 to 3 feet, and from it emanated a bright column of light in several shades of violet. It came beaming out of the craft, casting patterns on the surrounding area. Immediately, Stefan looked away from the light because it was so bright, and he could see like the little red spots you see, like when you look at something bright.
Yeah.
So thank God he had the goggles. He just flipped them down. That's what's cool about this story, was the guy just had the perfect tool to get a good look at this shit.
Oh, wow.
So he flipped those things over so he could get a good look at it.
Not going to blind his ass, yeah.
Right. And keep in mind, this light is bright. It's also the middle of the day.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And it's I think they said it was partly cloudy that day, but still there's going to be sunlight and stuff. So this light, even surrounded by daylight, was like blinding.
That bright, yeah.
And it's like purple and shit. So finally, Stefan could no longer resist temptation.
Of course he can't.
He wanted to
it's
get
okay, Stefan, go ahead.
He wanted to get a closer look. He began to cautiously approach the craft until he was only within a few feet from it. Stefan could hear something inside. It sounded like voices were coming from the inside of the craft.
Oh my God.
He was unable to tell what they were saying or even what language they were using, but it sounded like two people having a conversation. And here's the other thing. He said it did sound like human voices, though.
Okay.
With one voice being slightly more high-pitched than the other, so indicating probably two different people. His first thought was that it was Americans inside, that this was some sort of weird experimental craft that the Americans were working on.
Okay, yeah.
And so he also thought, well, they might need help if they're having technical difficulties. So going on that assumption, Stefan addressed it, speaking out loud, saying, hey, and even addressed them as Yankees.
Oh, really?
Assuming they're Americans, just saying, hey, Yankees, do you need help? I can help, no answer. But the voices stopped.
Oh, God.
As if they didn't know he was there. And then it's like,
oh, you guys, that scares me. That I don't like that.
So the voices stop. Silence. Stefan is unsure what to do next. So he knows other languages, so he tried the same thing, just in the other languages he knew. He knew 6 in total: English, German, Russian, Ukrainian, Italian, and Polish. Each got no response.
Wow.
Of course, doesn't get any response that way.
Damn.
He gets a little closer to the craft, and he peers inside the hatch. And thank God, remember, he has these. That's what's so cool about this story, is he's able to get a dope-ass look into this thing.
Right.
So he looks inside and gets a good look. Inside of this craft, there were multiple flashing lights of all sorts of colors. And in the middle of the cabin, there were these bright columns of purple light jutting out vertically, horizontally, diagonally. This is how the source actually describes it. You know how like in a movie like Mission Impossible, when they're trying to break in somewhere and there'll be like those red lasers,
right?
That and they can't touch they've got to kind of limbo through them and shit. Kind of like that. It was maybe not red, but they were like these purple beams of light just shooting everywhere, almost like it was like a security system or something.
Right.
So there were blinking light on sort of like a panel. It was like a control panel. And here's what was interesting. The walls on the interior of the craft had sort of a beehive-like pattern.
Oh.
They didn't look like a beehive, but it had that shape of like honeycomb almost.
Right, yeah. Huh.
Which is something, I guess, it pops up in UFO stories a lot. This sort of pattern, this textured pattern.
That is interesting. Huh, okay.
He also estimated that the walls of the craft were probably about 20 to 22 inches thick from interior to exterior.
Oh, wow, okay.
Maybe what was weirdest of all, Stephen couldn't see any inhabitants inside the craft.
Oh, no.
This is a dope little look into the side of this craft. It looks like a goddamn rave.
Usually, let's drop some Molly and get to it.
It looks like a damn nightclub, for Christ's sake.
Yeah, and you don't usually people don't usually get a look inside of these things.
Yeah.
So this is big.
Like, there should be a damn bouncer out front.
Absolutely. Maybe that's Stefan.
Yeah.
Maybe they were trying to
You've always been the bouncer here, Stefan.
Oh, that rocks. Actually, that rocks. Literally, he likes rocks.
So Stefan's just standing there dumbfounded, right?
Yeah.
Suddenly, the hatch slammed shut. And the source said it was almost like a lens shuttering on a camera. It was very quick, precise, and efficient, like just a zip.
Right.
What was so wild was after it closed, it was like there was no sign a door was there at all. There was like no seam. Remember on like Bet Sphere, there was no seams. We hear that a lot. And so you would hear about like crafts morph. It's almost like this thing, it's made of material that can adapt to whatever it needs to be.
Yeah.
Maybe it's flying and then all of a sudden, hey, it needs to go underwater. Maybe it could, theoretically, this is not what happens. I'm saying almost like Green Lantern. Any DC Comics fans will know Green Lantern, his power of his ring, he can will because that's the power of the Green Lantern is the will. And he can will whatever he needs. So if he needs to go somewhere, he can will himself a green jet, fly there, or if he wants, he can will himself a big hammer to smack someone with. Shit like that. It's in a way, this is obviously not an exact, it's just the closest thing I can see in my head.
Yes,
sort of.
No, for sure, yeah.
To look at the craft, it looked like it was seamless, which, as we said, very common thing. And the craft was solid and almost had like a reflectiveness to it, like it was glass, like it was so smooth,
Yeah.
Heat still seemed to be emanating off of it. So on one side of this craft, Stefan noticed a rectangular vent about 9 by 6 inches and it had these rows of columns and openings that were, about a 1/4 inch in diameter.
Like little holes, kind of?
Yeah, almost like a ventilation thing or something. So he was wearing these yellowish protective gloves, for prospecting and stuff. So he thought, well, what the heck? Might as well touch it.
No.
Well, he touched it.
Fuck.
And it was so hot, it immediately melted his glove, burning his fingertips.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, the craft then turned red.
Oh,
and began to rotate counterclockwise. Stephen, startled, and his fingers are, he jumps back about 6 feet. Suddenly, that rectangular-shaped vent points right towards him and discharges a blast of heat. It hits Stefan directly in his chest.
Oh, no.
Blowing him backward and away from the craft.
Oh, no.
Immediately, Stefan knew he was hurt. His shirt was on fucking fire.
Oh, no. Stop, drop, and roll, Stefan.
He quickly scrambled and got his shirt off. His undershirt was also on fire, so he had to take that off as well. The craft then lifted off the ground, turning onto one side. It rose above the tree line and then rocketed off quietly. Stefan was able to briefly see it for a few moments as it was rocketing away, changing color, and then eventually it just disappeared into the clouds.
This is so bizarre, and this also kind of pisses me off. It's like, why did you attack this man? Like, you guys, if this is aliens or whatever, it's like, you guys are clearly, like, superior to us in some way, at least.
Right.
Like, can you not, like, this man is clearly not a threat. He's out here prospecting.
Right.
Why are we It's like...
Prospecting pain.
Yeah, seriously, what the HE double hockey sticks is going the F on?
Luckily, Chris Jericho came in and gave each one of those alien bastards a code breaker.
Come on.
And
that did not happen, okay? That is not canon.
And then Chris Jericho and Stefan went on to have a long tag team title reign.
Oh, that part is true.
Incredible.
Very
But
cool.
anyway, it should be noted, though, that before this happened, Stefan, when he was, like, taking, sketches and stuff, and immediately, like, after it had left, his compass, the needle on his compass was spinning around erratically, almost like there was a magnetic field nearby.
Yes.
Another common trope of
Skinwalker Ranch.
Skinwalker Ranch.
All about this alien stuff, and really just high strangeness in general. A lot of messing with magnetic fields and compasses, and where is true north,
Exactly. Stefan's burning undershirt had actually started fire to some nearby leaves.
Oh, no.
Luckily, he was able to stamp it out before a brush fire got started. Can you imagine how shitty that would be?
Oh, my God.
If like, this happened, and if, like, no one believed you and you're the asshole who started a fire?
Yeah.
So, Stephen was burned on his stomach and chest, and at the front of his cap that he was wearing was even burned as well. Stephen lingered in the area for about 10 minutes just investigating when he started to become very, very ill.
Oh, no.
Stricken with nausea and a headache, he just almost immediately just started puking, like profusely.
Yeah.
The area reeked of sulfur and a sort of burning electrical smell, which also seemed to be coming from his body as well, like it was on him.
No.
Not to mention, obviously his burns probably fucking hurt as well.
Right,
on top
yeah.
of that. Every now and then, he would also get this sort of burnt electrical taste in his mouth as well. That would come and go, well, as quickly as he could. Stefan gathered up his tools. He even left some behind, I think like a metal measuring tape and like a saw. He had left things behind because he was in such a hurry.
He's like, I can't.
He threw on that lightweight jacket since he didn't have any other shirts to wear.
Thank God he brought that jacket.
I know, because then he would have looked crazy coming out.
Right, yeah.
So this whole time, like I said, while packing up his stuff, Stephen's like vomiting.
Oh, no.
Very nauseous. And remember, he was like 2 miles from the highway alone.
Oh, God.
And then it was like another mile back. Yeah. So finally at about 3 p.m., he stumbles onto the highway. This whole time, he's been vomiting, stuff like that. Stefan was in luck, though, because down the highway came driving a constable from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police.
Oh, a constable.
He waved the officer down and explained to him what happened. So, according to Stefan, the officer did little more than just shoo him away, thinking he was just some raving drunk.
Oh, yeah.
He drove off, leaving Stefan there.
Oh, my God. You're kidding me.
And while this does suck, the source does say that Stefan wasn't very clear about what happened to him for a few reasons. The main reason was he had not yet laid claim to that vein of quartz, and he didn't want anyone else knowing in case he, had got lucky out there.
He was, trying to keep it hush hush, yeah.
Likewise, he was concerned that he might be contaminated with some sort of radioactivity. He didn't want to get anyone else sick, so he wasn't getting too close to the officers. So the officers thinking, okay, this guy's like a loony.
Yes.
And we'll get to this, and it's this actual police report that I will read later.
And also later, I'm sure it'll come up more, but if you, by any chance, happen to see a UFO or
Right.
see, or come in close contact with anything like that, do not touch it.
So Stefan finally made it back to the town of Falcon Beach at about 4 p.m. There was a local headquarters of the mounted police where, once again, his story was rejected as just drunk and rambling.
Yeah.
So Stefan then headed back to that motel where he had stayed the night before and asked an employee where he could get some medical attention.
Oh my, this is terrible. Fuck the police for just being like, you're drunk. It's like, well, he's clearly ill, even if he was just drunk.
And we'll read because the police reports paints a slightly different picture. We'll get to that later.
Okay.
The nearest hospital was 45 miles to the east of Falcon Beach. He didn't want to go that way because that would have taken him farther away from his home in Winnipeg. So next he tried calling the Winnipeg Tribune, but because he didn't want to attract any sort of publicity, they weren't interested in the story because he couldn't really give them anything.
Oh, okay.
So he didn't want his family to worry about him, so he called his wife and just told her he just had been injured while prospecting and that he was taking the bus home.
He took the bus home?
He took the bus home. He got in at about 10:25 in Winnipeg. His son picked him up and took him to the nearby Misericordia Hospital, where he was treated by a doctor. When the doctor saw this grid-like pattern of the burns on Stefan's belly, obviously he asked what happened, but not wanting to be written off as crazy, Stefan said he was burned by an airplane exhaust.
I mean, I guess kind of true.
Yeah. Well, the burns were actually determined not to be very dangerous, so he was treated for them and sent home.
Okay.
But in the coming days, Stefan would continue to be afflicted with nausea, headaches, and that weird taste would get in his mouth.
And wasn't he blacking out too?
Yeah, he was blacking out, all that stuff. The next day, a reporter from the Winnipeg Tribune would come and interview him, and then that's how word kind of got out. But within a span of about a week, Stefan lost 22 pounds.
Oh my God.
And it wasn't until about 11 days later that he began to regain strength and his health began to bounce back.
22 pounds in a week. Oof, that is bad news, baby.
So a lot happens in the next 2 weeks involving investigations. So what I'm going to do right now is read to you the initial police report that happened on that Saturday when he met that constable on the highway.
20th of May, 67. At approximately 3 p.m. this date, I was patrolling 1/2 mile west of Falcon Beach, Manitoba, when I noticed a man walking on the south shoulder of the highway towards Falcon Beach. He was wearing a gray cap, brown jacket with no shirt, light-colored trousers, and carrying a brown briefcase. The subject, upon seeing the police car, began waving his arms excitedly. I turned around on the highway and drove back to see what he wanted. He shouted to me to stay away from him. I asked him why, and he replied that he had seen 2 spaceships. He said I might get some sort of skin disease or radiation if I came too close. He seemed very upset. I asked for some identification, and he gave me a document pertaining to prospecting, which showed his name as Stefan Michalak of 314 Lindsay Street, Winnipeg, Manitoba. I inquired as to the circumstances surrounding his unusual experience, and Mr. Michalak related the following story. He apparently had been prospecting approximately 1 mile west and 2 miles north of Falcon Beach. At about 12 p.m. noon, he sighted the 2 spaceships. He said they were rotating at a high rate of speed and emitted a red glow. The spaceships landed near him, and he reportedly touched one. The exhaust of some sort of hot substance came off the spaceship, burning his shirt, chest, and hat. The spaceships remained a while, how long was not certain, then flew away. He left the bush to get medical treatment. Michalak showed me his cap, the back of which was burnt. I wanted to examine his shirt, however, he would not let me and kept backing away every time I got close to him. As far as I was able to determine, the back of Michalak's head was not burnt. It appeared to me that Michalak had taken a black substance, possibly wood ashes, and rubbed it on his chest. At no time during my conversations with Michalak would he allow me close enough to him to definitely see whether or not he was injured. I asked him why his hands were not burnt if he had touched the spaceship, and he would not answer me. At my request, he drew a diagram of the spaceship, which appeared to be saucer-shaped. I could not smell the odor of liquor on Michalak. His general appearance was not dissimilar to that of a person who has overindulged. His eyes were bloodshot, and when questioned in detail, could or would not answer coherently. I offered to drive him to Falcon Beach and arrange for someone to treat him, but he declined, saying that he was all right. Approximately 1/2 hour later, he came to the detachment office and asked for me. He would not enter the office.
So paints a slightly different picture, saying it looked like he had smeared ash or something on him.
Well, I mean, it does paint kind of a different picture, I guess, but also I don't really think it discredits him.
Exactly.
I mean, I know
if
this
he
was
can't
a
get a good look. If he's not letting him get an up close look, who knows what it is?
Right.
You know what I mean?
And I know this was a different time, and people in general weren't as aware of UFOs, or weren't as, even today, people aren't.
Right.
A lot of people aren't very accepting of
Right.
the idea that there are UFOs. So I do understand that, but like the fact that there was ash or dirt on his chest or whatever, it's like, well, he was on fire, so he was probably
Right.
like rolling around
Exactly.
and stuff. It's like, I don't really, that doesn't take away anything.
Exactly.
I don't know. I understand that this probably seemed incredibly strange,
Right.
but I wouldn't just write it off.
Absolutely. Now, for the most part, Stefan's story lined up with what other witnesses told police. There were some conflicts, however, but not really big ones. For example, apparently Stefan had actually stayed in room 17, not room 13.
Oh.
But, I mean, that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Also, one witness said that Stefan had roughly 5 beers the night before the incident, but Stefan said that wasn't possible because he was in bed by 10:30 p.m., and they said that he didn't leave the bar till sometime after around 11 p.m. And the bartender did say he could have been mistaken, but go ahead, because I think I know what you're going to say.
Okay, he had 5 beers the previous night.
Right.
Okay, any waitresses or waiters out there, my server homies, okay? If you've worked in the restaurant industry, you know 1 hour per drink is the rule, okay? It takes you an hour per drink to sober up. If this man had 5 beers the night before, if he had 10 beers the night before, the man would be sober by now.
Also, even if he was shit-faced drunk when the thing happened, like, beer doesn't make you hallucinate.
Yeah, it's
I mean,
like,
maybe, I don't want to speak for everyone. Maybe, I'm sure people have different reactions to things,
no,
but
beer
like,
does not make you hallucinate.
last time I checked, you know, 5 beers, I at most had a headache the next day.
It makes you tired and it makes your stomach feel bloated.
Yeah, I wasn't hallucinating a goddamn rave in the Canadian wilderness.
If it's going to make you want to take a nap and yell at your nieces and nephews, that's it.
Numerous tests on Stefan and his clothing also detected no radiation. So it was determined that the burns must have been thermal. And likewise, police checked around at hospitals and mental health facilities in the area to see if Stefan had a history of mental illness. Nothing. There was nothing of that. They checked with his place of employment, the Inland Cement Company, and they had nothing but good things to say about Stefan. Pragmatic, very rational, hardworking, friendly, reliable.
I love Stefan.
Yeah. So now it's June 1st. A few days go by. During this time, they had been trying to get him to go out there with him to find this place, but he had been very sick.
Right.
On June 1st, Stefan was actually able to go. So he was taken to the area by the authorities, and they flew in a helicopter above the area. But Stefan was unable to pinpoint the place. So they landed the helicopter and they tried looking on foot, and they knew they were in the right area because Stefan had told them he had left behind a saw and placed it on a rock ledge. Authorities found that saw.
Oh, okay.
So
they were in the right zone.
the case was closed briefly on June 18th, 1967, because the site couldn't be found. But it was opened a few days later on June 26th, when Stefan reported he had found the place. This time with another witness accompanying him. They found the burned shirt as well as the tools left behind. They even took samples of burned rocks. They photographed the area. So by this time, Stefan, though, was refusing to cooperate with the Mountie police.
Oh, no.
Over what he felt were personal attacks on his character about drinking and all this shit. But he had no problem working with the Canadian Air Force. So it's not like he didn't.
Right.
It would be one thing if he was like, I don't want any authorities. He just didn't want the police to, for whatever reason, he had a, you know.
Well, I mean, it seems like the police weren't really taking him seriously
Right.
at all. You know?
But here is where it gets weird. Now, I'm not sure. I reread this a bunch of times. I'm not sure if I just read this wrong or what. So those samples that Stefan took, he gave them to the Royal Air Force. They get tested, and they did test highly positive for radioactivity.
That's right.
But somehow, I don't know if it was a clerical error or something, the test results were sent back not to the Royal Air Force, but to the Mounted Police.
Oh, my.
So I'm not sure how that happens, but there you go.
Ugh,
Stefan
so annoying.
was not happy now that more people knew where this area was. It seems like more than figuring out what happened to him, he wanted to make sure if he struck a mine, because he was convinced that there was nickel. It was
right, yeah.
It was a nickel deposit he thinks he had found hidden in the quartz. So that's also might explain why, he might be a little secretive about that.
And that's kind of something that people bring up thinking like, oh, he made up this story because he didn't want anyone to find this area where he thought nickel was. He didn't want anyone to go there. And it's like, that doesn't make any sense at all. Right. It's like he saying that stuff and making that public is going to make a bunch of people go there.
Exactly.
Because they want to check it out. It's like, that just annoyed me when people are like, he made it up so that no one would go there. It's like, that's insane.
So now, not too far away, there was the Manitoba Cancer Clinic, and they had a designated zoned off area where they would dispose and bury radioactive materials.
Right.
There was a theory that maybe Stefan had illegally taken substances from there and used them to make that radioactive signature at the site, but an investigation of the area ruled out nothing had been tampered with. What a weird thing.
How could that have even occurred?
So to this day, it remains unsolved.
That's so interesting. But didn't you say, though, that Stefan himself doesn't think it was an alien?
Yes, and that's a good point. Stefan himself doesn't think this was extraterrestrials. He was, till the day of his death, convinced that it was some sort of a military thing, whether it was American, Canadian, whatever, that it was some sort of top secret. It might have been based on alien technology.
Right,
but
kind of reverse engineered or something, yeah.
Which I think kind of lends itself to what Inland Cement Company said about him being pragmatic. It is kind of of the two, both explanations are wild, but of the two, it is the more, I guess, logical explanation.
Yeah.
He would say, no, I don't think ETs are real, but I think that was some secret government thing.
Yeah.
So, interesting that he himself didn't think that it was UFO or extraterrestrials, but rather some sort of military project.
Yeah, I think a lot of the recorded UFO sightings, I think are both. I think some maybe are some sort of secret testing that is done and by the military that people see. And I think some are genuine alien technology. Right. I think it could be either one in general, but this one seems, for me, I want to believe. Right. I'm all into this stuff, so I'm kind of leaning towards alien, but I don't know. It's very. What do you think?
I honestly don't. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I really can't come down on either.
Right. It's hard. You can't really, that's the whole point, is that there is no firm answer.
Yeah. There's nothing that in my mind indicates either or. Both would be fantastic both
are
would be
cool.
wild if it was true. So I have no idea. All right. Well, that is going to wrap it up for Encounter at Falcon Lake.
Damn. What a wild story. Dylan, thank you for doing all that research and presenting the Creep Street Squad.
Of course. My pleasure.
If you'd like to support the podcast, please give us a like, a rating, a review, tell a friend about it, share on social media. It really does make a huge difference, and we so appreciate all of you guys. Our numbers have just been going up.
Every week they just go up and up.
And
baby.
We are so grateful for all of you. Thanks for listening. We feel the love.
Yes. Let's make sure this party don't stop. Everyone's welcome. Everyone is welcome on Creep Street, baby.
Do you have a weird cousin?
Hey, bring him on.
Do you have kind of an insecure neighbor?
Do you have a cousin who's not weird? Let's make him weird.
Yeah.
Do you have a neighbor that's not insecure? Well, we can take care of that.
Mm-hmm. But in the fun way.
In a fun way.
In a way where it makes you go, what do we know?
Exactly.
But also be confident and, live your life.
That's right. Citizens of the Milky Way, my name is Dylan Hackworth.
I'm Maureen Bogey.
Good night and goodbye.